Thank you, Nathan. And now we're going to dive into our talk with Dr. David Katz. Dr. Katz is the CEO of Diet ID, and he's the president of True Health Initiative. He's also the founder and former director of Yale University's Yale Griffith Prevention Research Center, and the author of several books that I'm sure you are familiar with. If you haven't checked them out, you will not regret doing so. He's the author of How to Eat with his co-author Mark Bittman and The Truth About Food. So welcome, Dr. Katz. He's going to join me on the stage. And I just want to say, for those of you joining us on LinkedIn Live, welcome to you. Also, during this chat, you'll have the opportunity to connect with Dr. Katz and ask your questions if you register to come and join us live on Zoom. So we're going to get the link in the comments for LinkedIn so that you can join us. And also then you'll have access to all of our sessions over the next 2 days. So hi, Dr. Katz.
Good morning, Maggie. How are you?
Good morning. I'm so happy to have you here. And again, as I said, I'm going to start off. I have some questions for you. And to everybody who's with us here on Zoom, you can start posting your questions as well, and I will ask those. I don't want to hog all the questions. I know there's a lot of people who want to talk to you. So we're going to get to as many questions as we can.
Maggie, so, where's the fire? We're having a fireside chat. You have it going somewhere?
I know, right? I would love. Nice and
it's chilly here this morning. It would almost work.
Yeah, we need some hot cocoa too, right? Let's go all in. Maybe in person for another event.
Next time.
Yeah. So I think probably everybody here is very familiar with you and your work. You've written extensively about the role of nutrition and healthy lifestyle and how that plays in overall health and optimizing health span. So that's what we're here to talk about today. Really how people of all ages can take proactive steps to live healthier for longer. So we're not talking about anti-aging, right? We're talking about healthy aging. So just so that we start out on the same page, how do you define healthy aging?
I think what we're looking to achieve is the best possible lives we can live. And if life is good, if you have the wherewithal to do the things you love to do, you don't want it to stop. So there are really two key component measures: years in life, life in years. And, I think there's a lot of emphasis inevitably in pop culture on fairly superficial things, right? So, can I do something to slow the aging of my hair or my skin or my vision? And the reality is, we learn in medical school, the shin bone really is connected to the ankle bone. And more importantly, everything's connected to everything else. So we really are talking about fueling native human vitality at its origins. So it has the greatest stamina and the greatest potency. And again, really you translate that to vitality, longevity, years in life, life in years. And I think it's critical to start the conversation, Maggie, by noting how profound the influence of diet and lifestyle can be. Just a brief historical perspective here. So I trained in internal medicine, finished that in 1991, went to Yale then to do my training in preventive medicine, public health. Why? Because I saw all the people in the hospital who didn't prevent the adverse effects of aging. Essentially got older, got sicker, and suffered the terrible fate of having their health unravel. And to be quite honest, and I have great respect for the prowess of modern medicine, but really in internal medicine, in hospital medicine, we are being trained to be all the king's horses and all the king's men. And what we deal with is the aftermath of that fall from the wall, and nothing in modern medicine can unscramble an egg. So I really was very frustrated. We basically, our job as medical residents was to try to prevent people dying on our watch. And, we did what we could to restore health. But again, all the king's horses, all the king's men, we really couldn't put vitality back together again. And I wanted to do more to prevent the fall from the wall. So that's why I went on to train, did a second residency in preventive medicine. Here's the historical tidbit I think is really very important. I finished that training in 1993, and I've been devoted to the enterprise of leveraging diet, lifestyle, everything we can do to add years to lives, life to years ever since. I graduated, I guess it must have been in June of 1993. I think that's when the program wrapped. In September, so just a few months from my graduation, a paper came out in the Journal of the American Medical Association. And everybody listening now and everybody who watches this later, I commend this paper to you. I realize this is not necessarily an academic audience, but that doesn't matter. I think this is one of the most important publications in the modern era. And the paper has this very provocative title, Actual Causes of Death in the United States. Now, that's provocative, right? It implies that everything we've ever heard about the causes of death must be a little bit wrong. And that's exactly what these two authors, preeminent epidemiologists Mike McGinnis and Bill Foege, had to say nearly 30 years ago. They said what gets listed on death certificates as causes of death are basically the degradations of chronic disease. So someone dies of heart failure due to a heart attack. The cause of death is atherosclerotic disease of the coronary arteries. Yeah, well, we knew that. People who die of heart disease have heart disease. How does that help anybody do anything about it? It doesn't. So what McGinnis and Foege did was dig deeper and say, what are the modifiable root causes of years lost from life, life lost from years, of all the premature deaths in the US and by extension, the modern world? What are the root causes? What's causing the atherosclerosis that's causing the heart attack, that's causing the heart failure, that's causing the death? They answered that question. 30 years ago, they answered that question. They enumerated a list of 10 factors which collectively explained almost all the premature death. And everything was modifiable then, let alone now. We had the knowledge 30 years ago to modify everything on that list. Here's what captivated my imagination. The first three things on the list were bad use of feet, forks, and fingers. In other words, lack of physical activity, bad dietary patterns, and doing this, bringing cigarettes to our mouths. So tobacco, poor diet, lack of physical activity. Flash forward to now, diet is number one. But I think that's a great place to begin the conversation, Maggie. Diet and lifestyle have the potential, in combination with avoiding toxins like tobacco, to eliminate 80% of premature death and chronic disease from the modern world as we know it. That's incredible.
I mean, that really is staggering. 80%.
It's staggering. 80%.
We have the control and the knowledge.
There's a lot we don't know how to fix yet, and we should certainly continue to generate Nobel Prizes in medicine, probe the unknown, get those new answers. But how absurd is it to award Nobel Prizes for extending the frontiers of knowledge when we fail to use the knowledge we have? Knowledge isn't power unless you use it. And so lying fallow for all of us is the opportunity to eliminate at least 80% of premature death and chronic disease. So, thinking as a public health physician, that's anti-aging. That's anti-aging at scale. That's anti-aging for the whole population. Now, you can leverage that as an individual and achieve the same effect. 80% lesser risk of ever developing any major chronic disease, 80% lesser risk of dying prematurely. And if we add the corollaries in, cultivating vitality and longevity years in life and years. There's lots more to discuss, but let's start there. The value potential of this is nothing short of staggering.
Absolutely. So let's dive in. I mean, so in attendance here, we have healthcare practitioners, we have natural products retailers, we have brands, we have ingredients suppliers. So everyone who's joining us today is dedicated, as you are, to helping people achieve greater health and longevity and avoiding these diseases. So you've often said that lifestyle is medicine. And as I said, I know our audience completely agrees with that. And as you started to discuss, to help people, you present these 6 basic components or 6 pillars that can pave the way to greater longevity and vitality. So what I'd love is if we can touch on each, and if you can give us some of the need to know essentials. So let's start, as you said, the number one thing is diet.
Well, let's back up and establish the 6, because I've only given 3 so far, right? So I've mentioned feet, forks, and fingers, and those are the 3 I focused on for my career, preferentially forks. So they're all very important, but thankfully we've had massive declines in smoking over the years. So diet is now number 1, physical activity a close second. But let's establish the 6, because you're right, there's 6 pillars. So it's feet, forks, fingers, sleep, stress, and love. And these are expressed differently by different people. My friend Dan Buettner, who founded the Blue Zones, uses different terminology. The American College of Lifestyle Medicine, where I served as president back in the day, uses different terminology. We're all talking about the same thing. So we're talking about avoiding toxins like tobacco, excess alcohol, etc. Eating an optimal diet, being physically active, getting enough sleep, not getting too much stress or managing the stress in our lives, and healthy interactions with other humans. Humans are social animals. John Donne may have said it best: no one is an island. We need those connections. We feed on them. They feed our souls. And so all love is good love. It's not just romantic love. It's friendship. It's solidarity. That's what I mean when I say love. And of course, that's a critical element of our mental health. So feet, forks, fingers, sleep, stress, and love. And as you say, diet for me is number one. And diet now is number one. There was an op-ed in the New York Times, August 19th, I believe, August 26, 2019. Darish Mozaffarian, Dean of Nutrition at Tufts, and Dan Glickman, former Secretary of Agriculture of the United States. Another provocative title. The title of this op-ed is "Our Food is Killing Too Many of Us." In this pop culture piece, easy to read. And so, these things that I'm mentioning now, by the way, you can just Google. So the paper that I mentioned was in the Journal of the American Medical Association, Actual Causes of Death. This was in the New York Times, Our Food is Killing Too Many of Us. They cite the Global Burden of Disease study. This is a massive undertaking of modern epidemiology, looking exactly as the name suggests at where is the burden of disease coming from in countries all around the world. And they identified dietary factors in 2019 as the leading cause of premature death in 195 countries all around the world. So in the New York Times, Mozaffarian and Glickman cite the primary peer-reviewed literature to say, in the US alone, bad diet quality, and let's be clear, this is something we have total control over. We're manufacturing bad diets. We're profiting from bad diets. We're doing this to one another on purpose for money. Mm-hmm. Bad diet in the United States kills more than 500,000 people prematurely every year. Now, this is a critically important time to be talking about this, Maggie, because when COVID took us past the threshold of 500,000 premature deaths, we had a national moment of reflection and mourning, and rightly so. Diet does this to our population every year, year in, year out, shows no sign of stopping. There's no crisis response. It's not populating the news cycle. It hides in plain sight. Now, this could be a gloomy conversation, but let's flip it around. What this means is if we get diet right, we could eliminate 500,000 premature deaths every year. And because diet influences health throughout the lifespan, it's not just a matter of avoiding death at a given point in time. It's about cultivating long-lasting vitality. So it really is about, yes, we would be adding years to lives. We would also be adding life to years. People who eat well are healthier, other things being equal, than people who don't. That means more vitality, more energy, more capability of doing the things you love to do and living life to the fullest. If that's not the ultimate meaning of healthy aging, I really don't know what would be. So we can dive into the details of what we know about what diet is best. I've devoted my career to that. You mentioned book writing. I've written a total of 19 books, among them 4 editions now of a leading textbook on nutrition for health professionals, nutrition and clinical practice. As we have this conversation, the 4th edition is in press. 750 pages, more than 10,000 scientific citations. It's the view from altitude. And I've done that for the general public as well. One of my books is also 750 pages. It's The Truth About Food. Funny thing about that book is The Truth About Food is only 7 words, and they're not even mine. They're Michael Pollan's, Eat Food, Not Too Much, Mostly Plants. That pretty much captures it. So I joke in the book itself, which is 200,000 words. Okay, so this should be a 7-word book, and it would all be plagiarism, not even mine. I have appended 199,993 words. Why? Because it's so hard for us to perceive, embrace, and act on the simple, fundamental truths of healthy eating. We are not clueless about the basic care and feeding of Homo sapiens. We just obscure that truth from one another, and we mostly do it for money. So it's perfectly clear now, diet is job one. If we could optimize diet, we could eradicate a tremendous burden of suffering from the human experience. And that's what it's about. And by the way, I think it's a good time to toss this into the conversation. So we're talking about healthy aging. And of course, for this group, the value proposition of that is clear: live longer, live better. But I think very often in our dialogues about health, Maggie, the value of health gets obscured because, I think we have a tendency to moralize. And so it may feel like health is at the end of an admonishing finger. I'm a doctor telling you, you should be healthy. You should take care of yourself. I'm wagging my finger at you, and nobody wants that. But that's wrong. What is the value in health? Healthy people have more fun. I don't think we talk nearly enough about this. This is not, oh, woe is me, I have to get healthy because I'm supposed to. Somebody told me I should. My mother said I should. My doctor said I should. Somebody wagged a finger at me. No, healthy people, other things being equal, have more fun. Life is better. Whatever it is you like to do, you can do more of it with more gusto if you're healthy. I don't think we talk nearly enough about the upside of health.
Yeah, I love that. And it ties into what you were saying earlier about that everything's connected. So another one of the pillars is feet, physical activity, obviously, but it's not just about like torture, like sweating it out on a table or something. It's being out, living life, being vibrant, and having the vitality to go on adventures. You know, it all adds up. So yeah, so maybe you could move on to physical activity. I know you're a big proponent. I was reading about your how active you are, and it's definitely inspirational and, you know, leading by example. So
well, thank you. All right, so yeah, let's pivot to that. And yes, this need not involve sweat and spandex, although it can. If you're into that, that's fine too.
If it makes you happy,
whatever, sweat and spandex works, but it doesn't have to be that combo. So yes, I'm very active. So let me start with the parochial, you know, sort of view of me, and then I want to expand out to a view of the world very quickly. So in my case, I no longer see patients. I now focus on public health activity, and I left academia to be an entrepreneur, and I presume we'll get into that. But I took care of patients for 30 years, and I had many of them over the years, as we talked about the importance of lifestyle, tell me, well, you know, I don't have time to be physically active. And my response was always the same. Gee, that's funny. I don't have time not to. You know, maybe you're busier than I am, but I kind of doubt it. You know, I'm running a lab, I'm seeing patients, I'm traveling around the world to give talks. You know, I bet I'm as busy as you are, and I don't have time not to be physically active, because yes, it requires management of your schedule. You do want to manage your time to do this, but it pays you back so richly. Talk about an ROI, more vitality, more acuity, more stamina, more cognitive horsepower at your disposal, more focus, more productivity. It's a very, very clear relationship. It's well established in the literature. There's absolutely no doubt about it. People who are routinely physically active get more done. So yes, you carve out time, but think of that exactly the way you would finances. You know, I don't have enough money to put any money away. Well, actually putting money away is what makes sure that you have enough money for all the things that are going to be important in a lifespan. Same thing with physical activity. It's an investment, and the ROI is absolutely huge. So in my case, I've always been devoted to it since I was 13. And we don't have time for the story of how I fell into and fell in love with physical activity, but I did. And I have been completely devoted to it in you know, every way imaginable ever since. Standard working out, so you know, no spandex, but you know, sweat and gyms, and I have a home gym and all that. But also there's just stuff I love to do. I have dogs, I love hiking with them. I have a horse. I'm a devoted equestrian. I do cross country riding, hunter jumper riding. Just took up polo at the age of 58, so that starts to feel a little bit like healthy aging to me. And I'm really excited to try to get good at polo, which will be a great challenge. I love to ski. Gone helicopter skiing in Haines, Alaska, with a friend of mine who's a 3-time member of the U.S. Olympic ski team. So
he's helicopter skiing.
Yeah,
I've
yeah.
never heard this.
Oh, it's wild. Yeah, we can talk more about that later. But suffice to say, my friend who is a 3-time Olympian is a better skier than I am by a wide margin. But I can hang with him. We ski together, and you know, so all this. I mean, this is living. So I've not had time not to exercise. I've relied on it as the incubator of my productivity all these years.
Yeah,
but now,
ROI, then it comes into stress too.
Oh, yes, we should talk about that. By the way, when we talk about the 6 pillars, right? Feet, forks, fingers, sleep, stress, and love, it's a really good point. So quick segue, and then back to the view from altitude about physical activity. Yeah, you know, it may sound like, gee, this is a long list. I mean, so I've got to sleep enough, and then I've got to have time to exercise, and I've got to worry about eating optimally, and then I have to manage my stress. And, you know, I mean, this is like a laundry list every day, and it's starting to stress me out that I have all this stuff to deal with. And it's I feel that way too. I mean, I get that. So you can double dip. I double dip routinely. I joke about myself I probably should meditate. My wife tells me I should meditate, but I have a problem with meditation, quiet meditation. I really try. I do some breathing exercises to center myself. Sometimes I breathe when I'm hiking in the woods, but for the most part, if I try to just flat out meditate, this is what happens. How many emails could I be answering now? How many emails could I be answering now? I just cannot do it. If I'm physically active, though, in the woods with my dogs, on horseback, that's meditation. And that is my stress relief. So I'm double dipping. I don't have to both worry about my stress and my physical activity. I relieve my stress with physical activity. I clear my mind. All of my important inventions, all of the things that resulted in patents, just about all of them came while I was working out. The intellectual property that is the foundation for my company, Diet ID. I remember the day I was on my elliptical working out very intensely, and I pretty much had an epiphany and an advance in dietary assessment. So yeah, you can double dip, and I think that's really important. Quickly, view from altitude. So yes, I exercise every day, but as you said, you don't need to exercise a particular way. So let's talk about the blue zones. They're going to suffuse this conversation because, frankly, that is the icon of healthy aging, right? Those 5 places around the world where people routinely live to be 100, don't get chronic disease. They have more years in life. They have more life in years. What do they get right every time? Feet, forks, fingers, sleep, stress, and love. The feet there, though, is literally just using their feet in routine ways. The blue zones are not famous for producing members of the Olympic team. They're famous for traditional lifestyle that involves a great deal of walking in their work, tending to their gardens, splitting wood, all the routine activities that people who have sort of a healthy connection to the land they live on engage in. And they're not famous for pumping iron. I assume some people who live in the blue zones, and for those who don't know, work of Dan Buettner, who identified on behalf of National Geographic those 5 populations with the highest concentrations of centenarians. So Ikaria, Greece, Sardinia, Italy, Okinawa, Japan, Loma Linda, California, and the Nicoya Peninsula in Costa Rica. Maybe there are others out there, and Dan needs to get off his couch and go find them. But in any event, we know about those 5 so far. And, they're very diverse populations. They're genetically diverse, certainly. They're culturally diverse. But what they have in common is they eat real food, not too much, mostly plants. They don't smoke much and avoid toxins. They get enough sleep. They're not stressed out. And they're physically active as part of their routine every day. It's just normal, and strong social connection, social cohesion. So they get all of the 6 pillars right. But the physical activity there, importantly, is just in the course of routine things you would do every day. And that counts. And I think that's really important. You want to go to the gym, go to the gym. You want to work out, work out. That is not a substitute for just putting motion in your day. And the final thing I'd say about this one, Maggie, is we are animals in a beautiful way that we forget because we have so modernized ourselves and so technologized ourselves. We talk about nature and humanity as if we're apart from it. No, we are a part of it. And like all animals, we have a native animal vitality, and it doesn't want to be in a cage, and it doesn't want to be on a leash. And it's odd to me in a way that we need all sorts of technology to goad us into being active. Count your steps. Okay, fine, count your steps. But you know what else? Count your blessings. If you have 2 legs that work like legs are supposed to do, not everybody does. If you can run and walk and jump and dance, celebrate it. We thrive when we let that animal vitality off of its leash and out of its cage. Quick anecdote. My dad's a cardiologist. He's 82 now. We hike together all the time. I can still do a 10-mile hike with my 82-year-old dad up and down hills, and a little slower than he used to be, but not much. But we've gone on hikes together where we reflect on the many patients we've each taken care of over the years who renounced that vitality. And, as we breathe in the crisp air in the New England woods in winter and look at sunlight glinting off frosted limbs and celebrate the opportunity to do that and to do it together, father and son, with my dad at 82. And we're sad for the many people we've cared for who squandered the opportunity to do the same. There's no reason why it should be a special privilege for us. It's just that our culture doesn't value health and vitality as it should. We teach our children to invest in wealth, We don't teach our children to invest in health. But there is no greater investment you could make, because that's the currency it pays you back in. Those kind of vivid experiences, you and your parent in their 80s, or when you're in your 80s, you and your kids and your grandkids and your great grandkids celebrating moments like that together, vital moments. That's the prize. That is the prize.
That's so beautiful. And it's, also leads into another piece of the whole puzzle, which is building connections. And when we chatted over the summer, we talked about something that I just thought was so interesting. You touched on all the fear and tension swirling around us with the world events, with the pandemic and political. I mean, obviously these are trying times. You said something that I found so striking. You said that how we deal with the pandemic is an exercise in healthy aging and how we're connecting with other people. Can you touch on that?
Well, first of all, I agree with you. These are trying times, and it requires something of a tangent for us having this healthy aging conversation. There are things we can do to tend well our own bodies. It's important for us to acknowledge that there are also things only the body politic can do. And I do think if we want to enjoy the rewards of healthy aging, we need to be good citizens of the world. I think the stresses that prevail, discord, dissent, political quagmires, the degradation of the natural beauties and treasures of this planet. I read just yesterday a report on devastation in the Amazon, basically to feed the global demand for beef. And it made me want to cry. And, I think that conspires against my healthy aging. I think anybody who thinks, dear God, we're going to bequeath to future generations a world without an Amazon rainforest. I mean, it's unimaginable. A loss beyond words. Now that weighs down your soul. So I think we have to be good citizens of the world. The pandemic, sadly, has occurred at a time when we have a hard time listening to one another, let alone agreeing. And I think it has demonstrated us the importance of human connection, because the isolation has come at a toll. We've had all sorts of spill out from the pandemic, costs unrelated to interactions with SARS-CoV-2, the cost of social isolation, depression, alcohol abuse, other chemical dependencies, worsening rates of addiction. The opioid crisis resurged during the pandemic. We were just extricating ourselves from the opioid crisis. It's gotten much worse because of the isolation, the anxiety, the desperation imbued by the COVID situation. It's also highlighted the fact that fractiousness among us basically sabotages our ability to deal effectively with crises. We indulge in fantasies like, if those of you who remember the Will Smith movie Independence Day, where we're attacked by malevolent extraterrestrials and the whole world comes together to defend ourselves. And we fantasize about that. But here we had that opportunity. The whole world could have come together to defend ourselves. What is the best global response? How do we share resources? How do we truly act like we're all in this together? And we didn't do any of that. This is not something any one of us can fix, obviously, but it is something all of us can participate in. We can all be part of the solution rather than part of the problem. We have got to be willing once again to listen, genuinely listen to opinions other than the ones we happen already to own, and to consider we may not have a monopoly on what's true. And we need others to be willing to do the same. It's a lengthy discussion potentially, Maggie, but I've written extensively about the pandemic as a public health physician, preventive medicine expert, including in the New York Times, where I published an op-ed in the very early going, which kind of sucked me into a vortex of global attention, for better or for worse. Yeah. I think we bungled everything in both directions. I think we polarized so quickly that we wound up with choices between lock down everything forever until the risk is zero, versus, liberate my state immediately and grandma can fend for herself. I mean, both of those points of view are absurd. And I think they both conspire against healthy aging in every way imaginable, because this one means we never get our lives back. And this one means we're sacrificing lives today with wanton disregard. And it also means, because we've gravitated to these polls, we don't listen to one another and support one another. So, I think in innumerable ways, the pandemic has shown a spotlight on the importance of social connection, on the importance of listening, not just talking, says the guy who's doing all the talking. That always seems a little ironic to me, but we really have to be willing to listen. And remember, we learn when we're listening. We don't tend to learn very much when we're the one doing the talking. But I think this has also highlighted the importance of social connection, right? Because the ways that we've been prevented from being together, normal, healthy ways. These virtual meetings are great. They're the next best thing to being there. But a virtual hug just doesn't satisfy. Right? We need one another. So I think there are innumerable lessons about human connectivity in the pandemic, and I hope we're learning them.
Absolutely. And another thing, I know you've been working, as you alluded to with the New York Times, I know you've been working so hard through this whole pandemic to help educate. And so you're the president of True Health Initiative, and we're going to get a website link up in the chat so viewers can check that out. But THI is dedicated to shedding light on just the massive health crisis in the US, not just COVID, but just the health situation in the US, as we've been talking about. Section on the website explains that in today's society, there's a multitude of competing agendas and motivations that obscure fundamental simple truths of healthy living. And it cautions there that if we don't create enduring sustainable change, we submit to a world where chronic disease and premature death are the norm, not the exception. Okay, so that is really scary to think that that's where we're heading. But we're so grateful to THI and so many of our industry attendees who are here who are striving to make a difference. So I know that one of the ways that you're working to kind of combat this all is working to fight these fake facts. Always a challenge. Since the winter of 2020, even more of a challenge. So I'm hoping you can talk about fighting fake facts. Like, what is your process for vetting information? I know, in the industry, we're trying to do this too, just to kind of seek out the truth and help spread the truth. So I know you've been working so hard on this in the New York Times articles and so published with all your efforts. So what's your process there?
Maggie, while I was listening to you, my puppy helped me get a little physical activity because she's coming in, going out. She's a relentless pest whenever I'm doing.
Exciting.
She's 8 months now, and she could be a little pestiferous. So THI is unique, and I'm very proud of establishing this nonprofit. It began when I was president of the American College of Lifestyle Medicine and thought, okay, I've been president. I was president-elect, and now I'm president. I'm soon to be immediate past president, and then I'll just be past president, and then everybody will forget about all this. How do I make this last and matter? In fact, we know what the power of lifestyle as medicine is. And it's not just medicine for people, it's medicine for the planet. And by the way, I do think, and so everybody listening in, I hope you'll agree. I tell my colleagues, I don't know how many of you are health professionals per se, but I've started ranting to my health professional colleagues. You cannot call yourself a health professional anymore if you don't advocate frequently and ferociously for the health of the planet. There are no healthy people on a ruined, ravaged, uninhabitable planet, devoid of the treasures of biodiversity and natural spaces. There just are not. So I would argue the same is true for all of you. If we're talking about healthy aging, it has to be healthy aging on a healthy planet. So you really need to be planetary health advocates. So THI is about science, sense, and global consensus related to more years in life, more life in years, but in a sustainable way, in partnership with the planet. Healthy people, healthy planet. And that's become a more and more salient element of the message. So the science is incontrovertible. It really is. And so, frankly, I've simply done what I've done all my career, followed the weight of evidence. We have tremendous clarity, ever more of it, by the way, from newer publications. But in the case of diet for both people and planet, the Eat Lancet Commission report is a seminal product. There are more and more works in this area. There's a great book recently called Planetary Health: How We Take Care of Ourselves by Taking Care of Nature, by Dr. Sam Myers at Harvard and Dr. Howard Frumpkin. It's excellent. And so more and more resources telling us we know what we know. The problem is, and by the way, back in the day, I worked for Good Morning America, ABC News. I was an on-air correspondent on Health Matters for 2.5 years. So from that and many other gigs in the media, whether it's commentary to magazines or writing routinely for them, I wrote for Oprah's magazine as a nutrition columnist for 8 years. So, lots of exposure to the world of media. The world of media is not about educating us so we know what's what and say, okay, we're done here now. The world of media is about titillating us so we're never sure what's what and we tune in tomorrow. And, there's a literal mantra that hangs on the control room of all the morning shows and every news program: comfort the afflicted, afflict the comfortable. So, when you feel like you just can't stand it anymore, it's time to dole out the comfort, because you'll tune in to get the comfort. Everything's going to be okay. This is Walter Cronkite. The world will still be here tomorrow. You hear my gentle, reassuring paternal voice or whatever it is. But then once you get comfortable, it's time to afflict you. Wait a minute, it turns out that eating vegetables may make your eyeballs catch fire. Details tomorrow morning. So, that's how it works. So we never learn anything. We just go around and around and around in circles. And if you have an array of experts in, say, nutrition, my particular area of focus, you can ask them questions that will invite them to sound like they don't agree about anything. So which diet do you think is best, Dr. Ornish? Well, I think it's a low-fat, plant-exclusive diet. And which diet do you think is best, Dr. Hugh, chair of nutrition at Harvard? Well, I think it's a Mediterranean diet. Okay, well, we now had, two renowned nutrition experts just sound like they disagreed. And we ask a paleo expert, paleo's best. And we ask a vegan, and the vegan is best. And oh no, no two nutrition experts agree about anything. So guess what? While they fight it out, you can find me at Burger King, right? Business as usual, we never fix anything. And by the way, Burger King and McDonald's are why the Amazon is being raised, to remind you of that critical issue. But the reality is, it's the wrong question. What if you ask the world leading experts on Mediterranean, flexitarian, pescatarian, vegetarian, vegan, low fat, low carb, high carb, what do you think are the most important fundamentals of a health promoting diet, and in particular, a health promoting diet that's sustainable? It's Michael Pollan's 7 words: real food, not too much, mostly plants. In other words, we want to avoid ultra processed food. And the closer we eat to nature, the better for the land, the better for the animals, the better for the environment, the better for our health. And we want to eat mostly plants. And frankly, even paleo experts acknowledge that 8 billion hungry Homo sapiens cannot eat like this is the Stone Age. It's just not. Dorothy, we're not in the Stone Age anymore. So what THI has done is created a global council that shows the world that agreement. You ask experts to talk about their expertise, they're going to focus on the little part of what they know that's different from what everybody else is talking about and make it sound like they agree with nobody. Listen to me, here's the special stuff I do. If you ask experts, hey, what do you do for yourself and your family, and how much does it look like what all the other experts do, you find out 85%, 90% confluence. Massively more agreement than disagreement. It's just that our pop culture never shows you that part. THI does. So visit truehealthinitiative.org, click on About Us, and look at our council. Hundreds, literally hundreds of world-leading experts, and I mean world-leading experts, former surgeons general of the United States, CEOs of major health institutions like the Cleveland Clinic, deans of schools of public health and medicine, chairs of departments, frankly, household names like Sanjay Gupta in health journalism, famous chefs like Alice Waters and Marcus Samuelson, and on it goes. The leading experts in the paleo diet to the leading experts in vegan diets, all coming together to say, world, we agree. We agree massively more than we disagree. You just only ever hear us talk about our disagreements because they're more titillating. But THI exposes the agreement. So what we're about is the science, the sense, and the global expert consensus about sustainable lifestyle as medicine. So check us out. More important, support us, join us, be part of that movement. So we're essentially saying the world deserves to know what experts know. And just quickly, Maggie, it's a long answer, but the origin of the THI concept, when I had this idea, because I had already been going to conferences around the world for years with all these folks. And I would hear them get up to the podium sequentially. We'd all take our turn, and it would sound like we all had different points of view. And then it would be lunchtime. and we'd all get in line, and I'd look at our plates and say, however we disagree, our plates look massively more like one another's than anything in the room looks like how the typical American eats. So, the paleo expert has a big plate of greens and wild salmon, and the vegan expert has a big plate of greens and chickpeas, but, much more alike than different, and neither is eating glow-in-the-dark Frankenfood like the typical American does every day. The world deserves to know.
Excellent. I mean, I think that's something everybody here can and wants to get behind. So thanks for telling us about that. We do have about 5 minutes left. I want to get to some of the questions that have been coming in. This question,
Sorry, my answers are too long.
No, please. Excellent information. I love this question, though. She says she loves the message, live with more gusto. The upside of healthy living. Is that a message you'd like to see the natural products industry spread more? And are there other things you'd like to see from the natural products industry?
Yeah, well, thank you. And yes, so I certainly think we should all be talking more about the value proposition of health, because I think we all win. The idea that health is something you nurture, cultivate, invest in, pay forward. Most of what we might sell to people, questionable whether or not they can share it with others, right? I mean, think about what I've done as a physician all these years. I never gave a prescription for a medication I wanted my patient to share with their family. Lifestyle is medicine? Oh yeah, share it with everybody you love. Share it with your children, share it with your parents, pay it forward. So I think everything about healthy living is a beautiful message that deserves to be refracted through the prism of opportunity. It's not about admonition. It's not about the wagging finger. So yes, please help with that. The value proposition of lifestyle as medicine is incredible. And then I think for the natural products community, it's important to align what you do with lifestyle practices. So in other words, enhance what you can do with lifestyle with the products that you all offer. I do think it's important. I think there's real value. I think you cultivate customer loyalty when you don't overreach, right? Because no supplement is a substitute for what you can do about feet, forks, fingers, sleep, stress, and love. It's just not, right? I mean, there's nothing in a pill, not a pharmaceutical, not a nutraceutical, that is a substitute for healthy living. And the Blue Zone formula, so far as we know, doesn't rely very much on products. It relies on lifestyle. But there is a real value in products. I worked for many years with naturopathic physicians. We made extensive use of nutraceuticals. I believe in the value of judicious supplementation, all of that. But we want a symbiosis there. We want synergy. We don't want people thinking there's a shortcut. So I think you have a critical role to play. And I do think when you offer products in the context of we are champions of the value of lifestyle as medicine, and here's how what we offer we believe can facilitate that, can enhance that. The honesty in that message, I think, is good for the consumer, and I think it's good for your business as well.
Absolutely. We have a question here. This is just an interesting one. What is your favorite book that you wrote?
My favorite book that I wrote, I think it's The Truth About Food. So, again, this is my magnum opus, 200,000 words. All proceeds, by the way, from The Truth About Food go to the True Health Initiative. I would warn you against reading it cover to cover if you're going to get it. It's very inexpensive at Amazon, by the way, because there's a certain amount of willful redundancy built in, because I basically was exposing all of the lies that make it so hard for us as a global community to embrace the fundamental truths of food as medicine for people and planet, and to act on it. And so many of those lies involve related arguments. Here's how we've been duped, and here's how to see through that. But it basically was, for me, a brain dump, which was extremely, a source of relief, frankly. I mean, I had this tremendous frustration. I wrote a column for the Huffington Post years ago, living and dying on a diet of unintended consequences. And what I meant by that was, was there potential value in cutting fat from our diets? Yeah. If fat comes from meat and dairy, and the way you cut it is to eat more vegetables, fruits, whole grains, beans, lentils, nuts, and seeds, there would have been tremendous value. But there was no value in the invention of low-fat junk food, which is what happened. We basically all started saying, hey, SnackWell's low fat, I can eat the whole box. No, that's not what that was supposed to be about. And then we've done the same thing over and over again. We cut carbs, and we got low carb brownies, and we avoided gluten and ate gluten-free junk. And now God knows what we're doing. We're loading up on sirtuins or avoiding, I don't know, I've sort of lost track, but low glycemic junk and gluten-free junk and lectin-free junk, and on it goes. So, we keep missing the big picture. And in this book, I explain how all of that happened, how it's frustrated me. What are the lies? What are the distortions? What's the truth? How does the truth reverberate through all of these different distortions? What's the evidence? So it's not just everything I know, but it's all the logical arguments about how I know it. And as a scientist, I've conducted and published dozens of randomized controlled trials. I've conducted and published meta-analyses and systematic reviews. And I have actually invented methods of evidence synthesis that have caught on around the world. But as that guy, I can tell you, sense matters. Science has the force of a freight train to drive us toward hard to reach answers, but sense must lay the tracks. Absent the tracks, you get a train wreck every time, right? A very potent force driving toward truth, but in an uncontrolled, discordant way. It's absolutely critical if you want to get good answers that you ask good questions. And that's what sense does. So this book is basically all of my sense, as well as all of the available science on sustainable, healthy eating, the truth about food.
Excellent. Well, I think that's a great place to wrap up. We have covered so much ground, and it's just been my honor. I am so grateful that you came here and shared your insights and took the time to speak with us today. And, we have lots of great information we can follow up with your books and to learn more, and Diet ID as well. So thank you for filling us in. And now we're going to move on. So thank you, Dr. Katz.
Pleasure, Maggie. Thank you. It enriched my day.